Okay, it is 6:03. The meeting is called to order. First order of business is a review and adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion to adopt the agenda as published. Is there discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Oh, anyone opposed? Thank you. Next item is a review and of the minutes of the last meeting, which was March 11th.
Yeah,
At time, this year, actually. You remember, we had a special meeting at which we decided to apply for the planning grants. And eventually the select board agreed. And we did apply for them and, but that's the minutes. What do you want to do with the minutes? I need a motion.
To accept as presented.
I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 11th. Is there discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. New business. As you know, Martha is here, Martha Harrison. She has been helping us with the application process with the planning, the planning funds and such. And as I said in the memo here, we did not get the planning grants. They said they didn't have enough money.
Well,
So-
they didn't have enough money?
They didn't have enough.
Okay.
Well, what they said is there were more applications than they had money to fund.
Okay.
Okay.
and where did this money come from?
Oh, the state, you know.
You and me.
Yeah, right, I mean, so
Well, yeah, it's.
It's
our
not,
money.
it's not widgets.
which pocket is it coming out of? It's coming out of the same
Well,
pocket.
yeah, it's out of the pocket you're not paying attention to. So basically, I invited Martha to help us in finding where we go from here. Because, I mean, there are our town plan needs to be rewritten and readopted by August of next year. And if we had gotten the plan, the plan or the planning grants, my intent was to not only do the town plan, but also the implementation document, which is the town, the zoning regulations, needed to be redone as well. And so now we have to decide what we want to do.
Sure, question. What kind of money are we talking about?
I think Martha applied for $33,000.
Okay.
So that's what it costs to do this properly, but we're gonna do it for free.
Well, here's the thing. Martha is with the Regional Planning Commission, as you know.
They've been such.
And we have usually, when we,
Yeah,
and I've done the rewrite of this town plan. This is probably around the 8th time.
but we did get help, big help last.
We got help every time.
Okay.
We are not planners. We're volunteers. And I mean, I've done this for 40 years and I still don't know what Martha knows as far as what the state requires for us to do. So we always have help. And so now we need to decide what to do. So Martha, why don't you chime in and tell us what you think the possibilities might be?
Yes, well, so every 2 or 3 years, someone from Mark comes here to talk to you about the consultation. So we were planning to do that anyway, because we hadn't been here for a few years to talk about, your town plan and if there's anything you need that we can help you with. So kind of dovetails well with the fact that hey, you're working on your town plan or need to start working on your town plan. So before we do that, what I do or what someone from Mark does, go through your town plan carefully and compare it with what's required and what's out of date and all that, so. I did a little summary, suggestions. And, you know, just over those. I also asked Jason, given that he didn't get the grant, what kind of help we can give you.
Yeah.
Okay. He needs to work on our budget a little before he can really give a solid
Right,
answer on
yeah.
that.
Mhm.
But, you know, the 33,000 was because we were gonna do both. We were gonna try and rapidly back to back do the
Right.
plan and the zoning regs. I
Well,
wouldn't
we also, we
recommend-
had the time. If we had gotten the grant,
Right.
that would have given us a whole year to do it.
Two years, actually. We
Yeah.
could have done it 1 year for the plan
Right.
and then one for the zoning. Since you didn't get the grant, I mean, two things. One, they were delayed in their grant process this year. Usually it comes out in fall. They are gonna do it again in fall, for another round. So that is.
For next year's planning grant.
It's, I believe it's gonna be the end of September is the due date.
Mhm.
If they do the same thing and announce awards within a month or so,
Hmm.
by late this year,
Oh, I see.
we could know. I don't know the details about
Well,
start dates and all that,
What I seem to hear you say is that we ought to definitely apply for the next round.
well, that's one option. We could, once we know what Jason, what's available in the budgets for me to help you
Yeah,
anyways. I mean, he said at a minimum, you know, we can help you with updating data and whatever really needs to be done in order to comply with the state statutes and all that. So I know we can help, you know, to some extent. With or without a grant. I'm just saying that it is an option to apply for the grant. It's a short time frame. I mean, if you get an award in, say, November. And it's, I think it's September 10th, it actually expires. That's a pretty tight time frame to try and
yeah.
do a real thorough job on your town plan. But, you know,
Mhm.
there's something to think about, or maybe wait for the following year when you've just adopted your town plan and then apply for zoning, you know?
Well, that's a possibility, and if we can. And I have to find out from Jason. Jason Rasmussen is what do you call it?
Executive
The Executive Director of RPC, the Regional Planning Commission. And I've had a very good relationship with him. I mean, I've been on that board for 40 years for my sins. But so he has been over the years, they have been helping us, you know, reaching to get the new requirements and all that stuff. So we can do that again with the town plan, because that's probably the easier way to do that. And we may not need that much money. We do have a little bit of money in our planning commission fund. Which I haven't used in years, so there's a little bit of money there. But I think what we need to do is think about the next step. Once we have readopted the town plan, we need to make sure that the zoning regulations are, you know, reflective of what we changed. So, and I was just wondering what we can do. You know, you have a better handle of what's maybe available for grant money and all of that stuff, so. And also, I think I'm going to also ask to you give us an idea how much work there is to do the zoning regulations, you know?
Yeah,
So,
there's time to think about it.
Yeah,
It's like
right.
grant deadline, not till September,
right,
and you've already got the grant written, so it wouldn't be
Yeah, so I mean, I would ask that you keep that in front of you, to make sure that we apply for the planning grant the next round,
Right.
you know.
You have time to think about whether you wanna, still wanna double up, or you wanna
Well,
pull
I
out the
mean,
zoning and just do zoning, and we
yeah,
think about that.
we'll have a discussion about that, and
Yeah.
see what we can do.
I'm a little confused about what the money goes to that we don't have. What are we not buying?
It's
Your
for my
time?
time,
But
basically.
the state pays you. You're an
Uh,
employee of the
The
state.
regional
What's
planning
confusing?
commission pays me. And a lot of their funding comes from grants. So,
And
But grants come from the state that pays you that,
we also, as a town,
yeah,
all of the towns that are in the region, the 10 towns that are in the regional planning commission. Also pay for the professional staff that we have.
yeah.
So it's not just state money, it's also our money.
Right.
So
I mean, last time around, I guess wasn't aware of the grant process so much, and so I know that we did a lot of time reviewing things, but we didn't spend any time writing. That kind of came to us.
that's why,
That's what
that's
the
why
money's
I,
for.
that's what the money's for.
Makes no sense to me as a citizen, but let's just move on.
Well, the thing is, how would we do it?
Exactly.
How would we do it?
And what, but yet they're expecting us to now.
Well,
because we didn't get the
and
grant.
that's why they say, talk to the regional planning commission. That's what they say, you know, they say, the state says, we have given you some help. Talk to the regional planning commission. They're there to help you with all of those things that we require you to do.
So if we had gotten the $30,000, we wouldn't have hired the regional planning.
Yes, we would, that's exactly where the money would
So
have gone.
that's where we're both very confused.
Yeah.
I paid money to the state to pay them to do their job, and now I have to pay more money to the state for them to do the same job that they're already.
Well,
And
here's,
I realize that we
yeah.
didn't, and that we have nothing to do with this. It's just a frustration.
it's,
Confusing.
Well,
Very-
want me
Go
to,
ahead,
yeah,
please.
so
yeah,
every year, the regional planning commissions get sort of a big grant from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. That doesn't cover everything that we do, so then that gets supplemented when we get municipal planning grants or other grants, other things. So it isn't enough to cover everything that all the staff does. We do need additional grants. I don't quote me on this, but I think the money that ACCD gets to give these general sort of grants to the RPCs is from the property transfer tax. So it's not just generally taxing everyone in the state. Is my understanding.
Yeah.
But you do understand what we're saying, right?
Well, so
That we're paying you to do a job, and now we're having to pay you twice to do that job.
Because somebody up there isn't paying you enough.
I don't, but here's the thing. The regional planning commission, as its function, advises the town that it's a member,
Right.
we have, in that regional planning commission, there are 10 members,
Mhm.
then member towns. We have a small annual contribution to the staff for whatever they do for everybody, the same thing.
Right.
So now Andover is coming to the regional planning commission and say, the state requires us to redo our town plan by a certain time. What help can you give me? And Jason and Martha have looked at the time requirements that we would be looking at and say, let's apply for a grant that pays for all of our time to do all of those things that you want to do. That becomes an additional chore for them. That is not part of their daily duties. So that's why we need that grant money to pay them for the extra time. So it's, you know, it's I'm, I'm basically a skeptic of how the state operates in all of those things. But I have accepted the fact that I need to conform.
I have not. I have not at all.
Yeah, I
And this,
understand.
to me, seems like absolute perpetual motion on the state's part to create a source of income. By telling us that we have to do this,
Mhm.
and now we have to pay them to do what they're telling us we have to
Right.
do.
Yeah, the alternative is not just, not to go with the regional planning commission.
Right,
To go with another planner, a professional planner.
but we can take what she did.
Yeah,
She did this for free and she said, this is what I see, and we can implement this into the policy and pass it and not spend any more of our money that we don't have anyway.
yeah. Well, we don't have any money, you're right.
I mean,
Yeah,
across the board,
Yeah.
no one has
Right.
money.
Did we have a grant to do the last round?
yes.
If,
That's why we didn't have much.
if we have this information that will bring us into compliance, maybe minimal compliance, but compliance nonetheless with the state. My suggestion is we move forward with that and not take $30,000 out of the coffers that doesn't exist, first of all. And second of all, that just goes right back into the same pool that it came out of.
It does sound that way.
It definitely does. It definitely
You
does.
wouldn't Be paying,
I pay my taxes,
Right, right,
like,
but-
yes,
because
So-
you get my time just because I have no.
Yeah.
right.
It's hard to figure out. I think we're both having the problem. Where does the grant come from?
Just-
If not the same place that you come from.
The state doesn't sell widgets. Everything the state has was mine at one point.
Right.
I mean, there's no other way to look at it. You can disagree all you want, but there's no other way to look at it.
Right, no, I
And
understand.
so that's what I'm trying to save us from spending $30,000 of my kids' money.
Well, we can't. It's not an order to spend it.
I
We
guess
have to
what
do the
I'm,
work.
But what Joe's suggesting is in September, we reapply
Right.
for a grant to have this professionally done.
again, I have dealt with the Regional Planning Commission for many years. And I like the way they work. And I like the advice they have been giving us over the years. So I have, if I gotten the grant and they said to me, I can't do it because I don't have the time. We would have to go and find a professional planner
Right.
to do this, and we would have the money to do it with.
I see. So like, for
But,
example,
you
that
know,
last go around, we had all these fancy maps of every order table and the this and then that, and that was part of the grant paid for that.
Right,
And it helped us decide stuff like, well, the state says we have to identify places where windmills could come, or else they'll put them in your backyard. But if you've identified something, then
Right.
they're more likely to put them there. And so we have
that's the only
super
choice. Yeah,
information
yeah,
about every ground thing in the town. I made placements out of, I had them.
I know.
Um,
I remember the last,
Laminated
the last go around with the windmills.
I mean, it's very, it was so, facilitation was so amazing.
Yeah.
And I hate to think that we're just gonna cobble together some piece of crap, because we,
You know, as I said, I have been doing this for so long. And I have no idea what the state has changed in its requirements.
right.
I haven't kept up with it. I'm not a planner. I'm a volunteer. So I need to rely on people that do this professionally.
I guess that's what we're all saying, yeah.
So basically, what I'm asking the board is, how do we want to proceed? Really?
What are the choices?
Hmm?
What are our choices?
Well, you could ask you could ask one of the options, which I don't recommend. You could ask the select board to budget $20,000 for next year and hire a planner or hire the regional planning commission to do this update that the state requires us to do. Or we could try to get some money out of the next round of grants and go for that. And possibly one of the suggestions, and I think Martha mentioned it, maybe we should do, just concentrate on the first step, saying, let's do the town plan. And because the town plan is going to require some updating on revised mapping that the state has done. And all some other requirements that they have increased in the last 8 years. So we could do that. And perhaps get the enough time from the Regional Planning Commission to help us with that without having a rent. And see where that goes. Because we may have we have a bigger job on doing the zoning regulations, because zoning regulations are basically the document that enforces what the town plan says, right? So it needs to be more distinct, more specific on how to deal with specific things. It needs to be well thought out, because once you have it adopted, somebody will come and say, you said this, and this is how I interpret what that says, you know? So we need to be very, very careful about what we see in there.
Who enforces and how, whether or not we do things right?
We we have an executive, what do we call him?
Zoning administrator.
The zoning administrator. Dar. He lives
yeah.
up there, yeah. And he's been, he hasn't had any problems with people not complying. At least he hasn't told me anything about it. So that's been, most people will take a look at the regulations and follow them,
I
Well,
don't mean,
most
yeah,
people.
no, I mean us in terms of writing the thing, so, there's no information on parking. And evidently, you're supposed to have it. It's supposed to write this thing up and it never does have it.
Mhm.
And, somebody reads it, right, and says, oh, they didn't do the parking, is that what happens?
Of course.
And then they go to the select board and they say, your zoning commission is really.
And then the select board can tell us that we screwed up.
Okay, so we're not going to jail.
But we don't have anybody.
Well, we have, I parked.
Well, I mean, if you have, okay.
But the town hall you rent, so
I think we should take a dual approach.
Okay,
One. Wait till September. Two. Approach the select board for a possibility of a $30,000 budget impact next year.
That'll send them into orbit.
it'll send me into orbit.
But we should take options.
Wait, and that's what, I'm basically, that's what I was trying to do with this meeting.
Right.
Explore
yeah,
what options we might have. And which ones you would favor, really.
Those are the two that I would favor.
Can I'm really new to all of this, but. So the way I understand it is. There's multiple towns, if not every town has to do.
Oh, yeah,
Correct.
every town has to have a town plan.
So there's a finite amount of money. In the grant puddle out there.
Well, also you have to remember that not all of the towns, town plans come due at the same time. They
have the same
you know,
interval.
because ours was adopted 7 years ago. We would actually have, the town, the state changed the time period in which they require that the town plan be reviewed from 5 years to 8 years. 8 years for us is next year. We've adopted that about 7 years ago, the last time, and we had no help from all the professionals. So, but every year the state has a batch of money that they put into grants, planning grants to help towns to do the things that they ask us to
And
do.
it's on like a first come, first served basis on who
And,
gets that.
well,
money.
you know, what they told us, what they told us this time is that they had so many applications for that much money, and there wasn't enough money in the pool that they were given. So they had to, they gave grants for all of the money had, and then the ones that didn't get it, they didn't get it.
Yeah.
It's a mystery.
I guess I just have an issue with the fact that the state mandates or tells us that we have to do something to a certain specification,
And not funded.
but it's on us. You know, I mean, I guess that's
I
just
agree with
across the board and not just in this area.
Yes,
But I just think that, you know, I remember when I was on the select board that they did something about a salt shed years ago and it
Right.
had to be to certain specs.
right,
And I believe it was the great Sam Chauncey that said all the salts, we're gonna spread it on every square inch of road around here. Why does it have to be so covered up? Just
Yeah.
something like that. And I just think I don't know, I have an issue with the state telling us we have to do something and it's on you guys.
Yeah.
And it happens to be worth $33,000. That's what's killing me.
Well,
But like what
They
Nick,
said,
what
you know,
Nick says.
It's really a $20,000 piece of work. Somebody's gonna work for a few days, earn some good money because they're experts. But if it's really worth $33,000, it's a lot of work. You know,
In this
it's
case,
so
that
scary.
was for both documents, that was for the town plan and
Oh,
the
well, just the other side.
regulations. We were,
It's a
Yeah.
scary amount of,
Yeah.
of work, if that's what it costs to buy it.
that's exactly what we did.
Yeah,
We looked at what was required.
yeah,
After 8 years of having to redo the town plan,
right,
there are a lot of changes that we need to make.
yeah,
And in addition to, as I said, in order to implement what the town plan says, zoning regulations need to reflect what we changed. So it is a lot of work. There's no question
Oh,
about, you know, and, but,
so we have to first of all decide to do it, how can we not?
well, we have no choice when it comes to the town plan. We may have some wiggle room on the zoning regulations because they haven't told us time limit yet. And but my concern is that if we have a new town plan and the old zoning regulations that may not agree to what with each other, we may be in some difficulty. You know, if somebody has an interpretation that we
Do you mean
don't
in the,
agree.
you mean during the period where we have a new plan, but we don't yet have a new zone?
Yeah.
Ah,
well, the zone regulations, if your zoning regulations are out of compliance with the state's regulations overrule your zoning.
Right.
So there have been changes to,
That
certain
that could, that
requirements
could
that-
add another little difficulty if somebody says. Your regulations are out of date, I'm going with the state's
and
regulations.
now they can put the new town
And
plan.
then, you know, it
Which is
becomes
better.
very tight. So, we can.
This is
we
very,
can-
very
we can-
educational.
we can
Thank you. I don't
disagree.
mean to be grouchy.
No,
I
no,
mean,
Oh,
just-
no, no.
It's that it's,
We
it's
can
just, we're a
disagree
little
whether-
shocked.
Whether the state should be doing what it's doing.
Yeah,
But I submit that we really have no good cards,
Right,
as my favorite snake oil salesman says. We don't really have a good argument to say you can't tell us what to do. You know, so.
Just wish the grant was smaller.
What would you like,
it's
what would,
daunting to say.
so
we have
what
to
would you
do-
like, what would you like to do?
What is it?
John, go ahead.
just very quickly. So if we went right down through this. We're reasonably intelligent people here. We went right down through this and satisfied all of these, would we be good?
yes.
I think so, yes.
I mean, and let me confess that some of this is extra. I thought maybe we would get the grant, so I threw in some things that not strictly compliance related, but I thought would improve the document. Or your usability. So I can go through it,
Yeah.
right,
Do this?
what's strictly like
We-
required, because it's not in your document correctly.
Well, I wouldn't, I don't, personally, I wouldn't want to write the town plan.
Right.
I would ask the professional to do that.
Hmm.
At the very minimum.
Oh, good.
Based on what we know is required. And again, we know this only because they tell us,
Right, right.
okay? If we want to do that, that should be a fairly, not simple so much, but it should be fairly straightforward in meeting what the requirement is and what the chore is of writing the thing so that it goes with the requirement.
Covers that.
And then we would submit that rewrite of the town plan to the select board. We would have, first of all, we would have a public hearing, or at least one public hearing for public input to see what people thought. And once that process is done, we would submit it to the select board for its process. They are required to have a public hearing as well. And then they have an option of, excuse me. They have an option of adopting the town plan itself by a vote of the select board, or they have the option of submitting it to the voters. Again, it's a process that they need to decide how to do. And once that process is done, in the meantime, I would suggest that we ask Martha and the RPC to apply for the next round of grants.
Sure.
That would help us with the next step.
So here's, I think I'm gonna promise this is my last question, but we're gonna ask them to do this for us. And they will do it for us. And why would it be any, why wouldn't it be great? I mean, what would? If we'd had the grant and we asked them to do it, and how would that be different? They'll give us
Well,
something that's in
they would-
compliance and then
Yeah,
we would appreciate it.
they would do the job here
Yeah,
for working within what their funding is.
yeah,
Okay, and it would require a little bit more work around or time available, that kind of thing, but it's doable, but if that's where we want to go, I would suggest that we will ask the RPC to do that. And then also ask them. Excuse me, I'm talking too much.
yeah.
Ask them to apply for the next round of grants. Okay,
I agree with that. However, I think we should do a backup
yeah,
with approaching the select board with a potential $30,000 expense next year.
well, it probably won't be $30,000 because the $30,000 included working on the town plan as well. So,
But they both have to be done.
what I'll do is I will ask Martha and excuse me, and Jason.
Don't leave us, please.
To come up with a number that says, this is what we would need. And then make that suggestion to the select board.
Right, at that point,
Yeah.
we should go to the select board.
Yeah,
Right, at that point, once we have that number.
right. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because evidently that's what it costs.
And we will have that, I think, in time for the preparation of the next budget. Because they would have to,
Yeah,
they would have
that's
to
not
start working on it.
rely on one option.
Oh, yeah, okay. We will, we will do that. Okay. Are we agreed? Let me just make sure that I will say my understanding of what we decided here. we will, ask Martha to, do, a bare bones rewrite of the town plan for us. And, when we have that, we will schedule a public hearing. And, after that, we will submit it to the select board for their action, okay? In the meantime, in furtherance of looking at the rewrite of the zoning regulations, we're asking the RPC to apply for the next round of planning grants. And whether we get them or not, we will decide how to proceed after we know what the decision is. That work?
And that would be for the zoning regs.
That would be simply for the zoning regulations that we would, and that's one of the things I will talk to you and Jason about,
Yeah.
what that number would be.
Right.
And so, once we have that number, George and I will go harass the select board. Okay?
We're good at that.
But, is there anything else we need to talk? Is everybody?
As if we know, at least. It's not official business.
Any input?
Why didn't you, Brandon?
I have no idea. Well, what, the reason they sent us was they had a limited,
So somebody didn't get it.
a bunch of money. They had more applications than added up to the money. So they had to make a choice which grants were not
And
grants.
they don't give you the feedback about what's wrong with your application,
Well,
why your
you know,
town.
no, they don't say, there's anything wrong with it.
Well,
They just say you didn't get it.
Yeah, but they did.
Alphabetical.
You know, I grant you, our town is very simple compared to towns with more than one zone and all that
Well,
stuff.
yeah,
But they could have said, well, we don't have enough money to give everybody the whole amount, so everybody's short 5,000. They opted not to give us money and they didn't tell us why.
well,
The grant proposals usually get feedback.
you know, this is what the state does.
There were 5 from the Mark region, and
Yeah.
so 2 received grants
Yeah.
and 3 did not. So it wasn't just.
No, I'm sure that we weren't the only one, or else we'd
No.
have to secede, but. But I mean, usually you do get some feedback so that the next time you apply, you might write it.
We can
That
ask.
will-
You know, doesn't hurt
It
to
seems like
ask.
normal for them to tell us, right? Yeah, that would be great to know.
Mhm.
Is it like, oh, well, we did it only we did it by size? Small towns have an easier time and we, understandable. It's a reason.
I don't really wanna know. I gotta tell you,
Yeah.
I have no desire to know what, how they make sausage. Right, so,
Thank you, that's perfect.
are we agreed
It's helpful to.
on what, how we're gonna proceed?
Yes.
Can I just add one?
Yes, go ahead.
So the Regional Planning Commission this year, through the state law as well, also has to be working on the regional plan with major focus on housing and
Right,
land use.
yeah.
Have you already discussed that?
Well, no, we haven't. I haven't. You know, the planning commission only meets when I call them together. And the only time we've met, what I should say to you is that the same members also serve as the Board of Adjustment. So we all get together, but as a planning commission, we hardly ever, I think the last meeting before last March was last year in November sometime. So we don't get together because we don't have anything to do with except rewriting the town plan
Mhm.
and the other regulations. And we hadn't done that in years. So, but I know what the state requires for the Regional Planning Commission to address the housing issues. And that'll come down to us as well. And I'm I'm not sure that the planning commission is the one that's gonna take a position on that. It's very likely gonna be the select board that makes a decision about what is required. We will be aware of it and talk to them. But I don't think the planning commission is going to make a decision that would be binding on the select board. You know,
Well, right, I don't think we can, but
Yeah.
in your housing chapter.
Yeah.
Or what the state is now saying is that both regional plans and town plans
right,
have to have housing targets. Specific housing targets with
Mm.
actions to achieve those targets. They're not gonna come back and. There's not gonna be any consequence if you don't achieve the targets, but that's what they'll be coming to talk to you.
well,
about.
yeah, what they want to do is, they want it in a piece of document. Nobody's gonna enforce it.
Right.
And what I find,
That's the problem. It's not.
what I find with the select board, they look at the language and they think it's mandatory. They have no idea that the state is totally ignoring what they ask us to write. So, we will go through some interesting times.
I like, for example, this item in the first page here. Designated Peace Village, Simonsville as a village center. Village centers are not required to have public water or wastewater and come with some benefits, e.g. tax credits. Well, that's amazing information. I mean, I'm not sure how else we would find it if you hadn't told us.
Well,
And what's hiding under that 30?
we didn't know that, did we? We
No.
needed a planner to tell us.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
There you go.
There's
That will come up again when Jason or Aaron comes to talk to you about
Yeah.
housing targets and future land use maps,
Yeah.
because that's all related to village centers.
Well, also there was a Chris Urick, another member of the Regional Planning Commission, sent me an email saying, I need to talk to the planning commission about the, what is it, the flood hazard thing. We need to address the flood hazard that we may or may not have, who knows? I mean, back in what, 86 or so, we had some of the bridges wash out and whatnot, but hadn't had anything since then. But the
2011.
state requires us to be prepared.
Last year.
Yeah, we had some, So, unless there's anything else,
So when do we go through these recommendations and fine tune them? Like,
yeah,
I mean, there's a thing about parking and trailheads,
okay.
which don't exist. in
Yeah,
this
okay.
town.
Well, here's what I guess what I'm suggesting is that we've asked Martha to go through this town plan that we have and make sure that it contains all of the requirements that the state says we have to have in there. And once that draft is done, then we will ask Martha to come and talk to us and tell us why it is what it is. And we will make comments or ask questions, and make suggestions perhaps on how to make it better, But it'll be something that we will do. We will go over the draft that they prepare and the professionals prepare a draft and say, this is what complies with what
I
the
didn't know
state says.
if we offered insight before the draft, which would make more sense, because then they wouldn't have to rewrite the draft. But that's fine if that's.
Yeah, well, I don't
Because there's some
know.
misinformation.
Yeah,
In
right.
this brief document.
Well, there is no reason to why you cannot take a look at this and send suggestions to Martha.
I would say, please.
Okay. That would be helpful. In fact, it would be very helpful to have all of those things that you think about and have her have an opportunity to take a look and say, yeah, that might work, or the state's not gonna require us or not gonna allow us to do that.
Could I make a suggestion? That we take this go home, look at it, and at next ZBA meeting, all a little special session or. get
Well, we
feedback.
could, yeah, well, the zoning board of adjustment hasn't met since last November, as you know. We haven't had any business.
Okay,
No one's making any, doing anything.
Wait till they see this, they're gonna start building a house.
And, so, but, we can have a special meeting again. But as I said, and I think you're right, take a look at this. Have some thoughts that you have and submit them to, Martha. And do we have your email?
I know you do, if you want to.
All right,
I
I
can,
Totally
I have
fine.
yours.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can, I think, Jonathan can send out, make sure that everybody's got Martha's email, right? Could you do that?
Could you send out a PDF of the current plans?
I did.
Yeah, I think
You did, or he did.
Yeah, we did, but
Yeah,
I mean,
It was
yeah,
like 72 pages.
yeah.
oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, it's in a binder somewhere.
Yeah, I made him do that, and then he did it more than I expected to. So, but you said a PDF for everything, right, didn't you?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
that is 4 or 5 attachments. in that
Yeah.
email. Yeah.
and I can also mark this up with what's strictly required and some of the stuff was just. So, yeah. it'd be
Yeah,
interesting
you
to
can-
do.
you
And this is completely off topic, but how does a town address something that is required that doesn't exist in that town, i.e. a trailhead?
Right, just.
Like if
does,
that's required by the state,
You can just say, there's no public parking in Andover,
that's,
you know,
yeah,
that's, I was trying to, what I was trying to ask is, if the state requires us to have this. What do we do? Because we
Right.
don't have it, we don't have
Right.
it in place.
well, we just mentioned, we just informed the fact that we don't have that sort of facility.
Right,
You know,
okay.
that's it.
That's right. That's-
in parentheses, is this my question, like,
Yeah,
is there public parking? I
Yeah.
mean, there are, the town.
so Jonathan, if you would, make sure that all the members have Martha's email.
Yeah.
And also that Martha has everybody else's email as well. Would you make sure that?
Sure.
Then we can make sure that everybody gets this to communicate with. And that, I think you're right, makes the draft a lot better when we finally get the draft to have a look at. And then decide if we need to change things or if we don't change one thing, anything, we can schedule a public hearing. Okay,
makes sense.
that makes sense?
Yep.
Okay, if that's all we have, and unless your members have any questions, or Martha, you have any questions or suggestions?
Just do send me feedback and,
Yeah,
you know,
Okay.
there are things in here, a lot of the data, like, population, all that kind of stuff, I can get at a
well,
state
those
data
are,
bank.
those are
There's-
updates you can get.
But there's some things in here which if you do want to include them,
Yeah,
send me the information. Personally, I like plans that are useful, that maybe don't just meet the minimum requirements that the state has, but reflect what the town actually cares about and wants to do. So,
well, that's gonna be, it's gonna be an issue with the select board because when I was at the select board meeting, and I think you were there. They said, why don't we just readopt the thing?
I-
And I would be happy to do that if the state hadn't required that we have to update all of the information that the state has generated.
And we know what that information is.
That's exactly,
And that's my point. And again, I'm a cheap old Vermonter. But why can't we take what we did, which is very nice, take what they require us to add to it and say, there we go.
Yeah.
Give me back my 30
that's
grand.
exactly what we're gonna do.
Okay,
Yeah.
and we don't need to pay anybody $30,000 for that.
Not for that, no.
Okay,
We can, I think I can persuade Jason to make sure that there's enough time for Martha to do this work. And we'll go with that and next steps, we'll see where that goes. Okay? if we have an application for another grant and maybe get it, then we can work on the regulations at some point, you know. So thank you for coming
Thank you, Joe.
and we
Thank you.
we are adjourned at 6:53.